Hey, welcome to an oral history of the common folk. Today I'm joined with Nacho, and
Howdy.
he wants to talk about Magic the Gathering. Take it away, Nacho.
Right. So, where to start with that game?
Where to start indeed.
I guess I'll start at the beginning when I started playing. I suppose would be the best place.
First,
Started
there was
playing.
nothing.
Yeah, must have been 2018, I think, end of 2018. Started playing with a friend who I'd played League before at the time. Up until then, because they were super into Magic, and we'd play some Hearthstone, but they were more of a Magic player. So they introduced me to the game, told me to play the game online
Mhm.
through some of the jankiest possible like sites and apps. That it was awful. Honestly, it was terrible. Like, you
Yeah.
had to do everything manually. It was not great.
Oh
But
man.
no, yeah. Imagine playing Hearthstone, but everything's manual, even the random parts. It
Yeah,
is
that doesn't sound fun.
it's not great. But it wasn't. It was still fun. Like brewing and making decks and stuff. I got really into it. And eventually, I think it was for around Christmas. I got my first proper deck. It was a pre-con deck from 20, yeah, it was kind of 20, I think it was kind of 2019. I don't remember how they do the years. They do it weird. It's like it's 2020, but it's 2021 set. I don't fuck, it's weird. But yeah, I got that deck, and then after that, I started going to the actual stores they had here. They had one that was actually next to my university at the time. So I went there quite often after I got the deck and everything. Started playing there. It was a lot of fun. Like actually, like getting there, getting the sleeves, sleeving everything up, and playing it physically, and like being able to actually have everything tangible. Oh my god,
The big step
it
up from
is.
online only.
Oh, it's not just a. It's like it's insane. Like the feel of having the cards in your hand, physically have to shuffle 100 cards. Oh god, it's one of the best feelings in the world, in my opinion.
So,
Like, mhm.
so what's your favorite thing about Magic the Gathering?
Oh, it's well, this is a lot of things. For me, the biggest thing is that because I play Commander, which is the format that I play, Commander being so again, I'm going to be doing a lot of tangents, so apologies, but to
No,
explain a little bit about
all you.
Magic and the formats, Magic has basically a bunch of what they call formats, which is how you play the game. You have Standard, which is rotating sets that come out every year, kind of like how Hearthstone has Standard. Then there's Modern, which is still it's going back to a certain point, and both of those are 60 card sets or 60 card decks with 15 cards sideboard because you can switch cards since it's usually best of three. And but what I play is the best format, and no one can tell me otherwise. It is called Commander. Basically, Commander is a format where you get a legendary creature, and you can, which is a creature you can only have one of in the battlefield at a time. So if you have each legendary creature, you can have one for one of, but Um, basically, you pick a legendary creature. You can only build the deck around any card that has the same color identity as the creature. So if it's you have a commander that is green white, you can only have cards that are green white in your deck. Um,
Okay.
and what I find a lot about it is it's a multiplayer format. So you play with up to four friends, or with up to three friends. You can do four or a few more if you want to go crazy. But like, I love the fact that you got to sit down with friends, grab a deck that you built using the craziest, jankiest crap you found in a box, and then just duke it out.
Hmm. So is
Like,
it?
hmm, what's up? No,
I'm imagining this as sort of like a battlefield,
a
right?
little bit, yeah.
Like Commander and Battlefield.
Mhm.
But is it like standard magic where you directly attack the creature, or do you have engagements that you participate in?
No, no, it's essentially you play the same. You play same as Magic. So the gameplay is exactly the same. You play your lands, you tap your creatures, you play your spells. But the only difference being that there are more opponents, so certain cards are way more powerful, while the cards are less powerful. And there's a whole aspect of politics to the game that is so much
Politics.
fun.
What do you mean by
Politics.
that?
What I mean by politics is, let's say you're sitting with your friends and you're playing some, pretty, reasonable deck. It's not super crazy. One of your friends is playing something right out of a box, so it's pretty weak, all things considered. One of your other friends is playing something, reasonable, and then someone comes up with and says, "Hey, I'm playing Urza the High Lord Artificer today. I want to cream you guys turn three." What happens then is politics, by which I mean everyone beats the guy who has Urza because they don't want to lose in 3 turns.
It sounds really fun.
It's a lot of fun. I literally have a deck that it's a pre-con that came out this year that I'm slowly turning into something else, but it's a politics deck. The whole concept of the deck is I make a whole bunch of small creature tokens that fly. I can give them to my opponents because what my commander does is at the beginning of every combat, I can do one of 3 things. I can either lose a life, draw a card, create a token, or give all creatures +1/+1 counters. But the caveat to that is if I choose to do that, I have to do the same thing for one opponent.
Oh, I see. And that's where the
So
politics comes into play.
yeah, so I can tell, so I can go
Mm.
give them the stuff. I can choose to, be like, okay, you need a card. We're in a really bad spot. I'll let you draw cards. I don't have nothing in my deck right now. There's nothing that can save me. I can do that, or I can be like, hey, okay, I can give them 1/1/1 counters, so they have no creatures, so this is completely useless. And I have the deck is supposed to be chock full of all this like stuff that makes tokens and has a lot of control-y politics stuff, which is like, I'll give you some stuff, and in return, you don't mess with me.
So in this Machiavelli style deck, how do you make sure you have the upper hand? Because
A
I
lot
can
of removal.
imagine handing out
Mhm.
creatures would make you weaker in the long run, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's actually some cards that came with the reason I got the precon and then just build it straight up from the ground is that the precon comes with some really cool cards. Hold on, let me grab it because I have it next to me. There's one card who was literally at the top of the deck called Nils Disciple Enforcer. What he does at the beginning of every of my end step, I put a +1/+1 counter on one creature that every player controls.
Mhm.
But in return, that creature cannot attack me unless that player plays X, where X is the amount of +1/+1 counters that creature has. So if someone has a giant board of creatures that are all giant, I can be like, okay, all your creatures get +1/+1/+1 from my commander. And now, if you want to attack me with your 300 creatures, you have to pay 300 mana,
That's
which no
insane.
one ever has.
That's
yeah,
insane.
it's it's a lot of fun. I haven't got to play it too much, but the few games I have played it, it's been really fun.
Now, can you,
Just
you said you could share creatures. Could you share mana, right? Like the land cards?
no, you can't technically. There are some artifacts that are in the precon that let you tap. You can use the artifact to give other players mana. Technically,
Hmm.
rarely would you ever want to do that unless they need 1 mana to do a board wipe that is you're fine with. Um, but I haven't built a deck that way. My policy is more of I'll give you some stuff in return, like you don't mess with me, or like for 1 or 2 turns, or I'll give you some stuff so you can deal with that guy, or I'll do this. So it's all based off my commander mostly. But I have a couple of decks as well. But that's one of my favorite. One of my favorite parts is like just talking it. I'm like, hey, look, I know I have the crazy strong Nutso commander out right now, but like this guy's about to win. He has every combo piece out, and if he draws in like next turn, he has mana and he wins. And like everyone is saying like, okay, we're gonna focus this guy. And then like because there's no hard feelings in those cases. Like if they board up and everyone loses something, you're fine because you lose the game, even if you got screwed. And it's by design the format is casual, which is one of my favorite parts. There's people who make it degenerate and they make it super like, hey, I play High Lord, I play Urza. I like to have no fun, and I make sure no one has fun.
Because
And they're mhm.
I mean, like I don't know much except what you're telling me right now, but I can imagine that a politics deck like what you have, it would require you to have like super in-depth knowledge of not only the other player, but all the cards that they're holding in their deck too, you know?
uh,
Because you have to maneuver sort of in advance.
hmm. Yeah, but generally, again, so that's another part of what's nice about Commander. Generally, when someone puts down their deck, because you can always see what commander they have,
Hmm.
so you always know the kind of deck they're going to have.
Okay.
So if I sit down with someone who is playing something very sacrifice heavy, I'm not going to give them tokens because I know that's only helping them way more than it's benefiting me. So I'm going to give someone else. Or I might do, or like just like you can sort of assume what they have in their deck. Because there's like a lot of cards that are staples in the format. There's a lot of things that you see everywhere. There's a lot of things that are here or there. Um, and like you sort of get the hang of it. Like it takes a while because Commander doesn't rotate, so you have access to every card in the 25 years of Magic's history.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's a little like it's a little overwhelming at times, but at the same time, like seeing those cards no one ever uses is like, okay, that's cool. And like looking up cards that like fit your deck but nowhere else. Um, oh, it's just so much fun. Like deck building is one of my favorite things as well. Like I probably have like brewed up, but not like actually made quite a few decks. There's quite a few that I want to make, but haven't been able to yet. One specifically that is based around my very first legendary creature that I ever opened in a pack. Like
Which
ever
is
first. It's a dragon called Laughless Dragon Queen. I have in my binder. It's a 6 mana dragon, 4 generic and 2 red, 6/6. Whenever a drag, no, I think it's a non-token dragon. Hold on, let me look it up. I'm gonna just but it's either a non-token or a drag. Basically, whenever a dragon enters the battlefield, under your control, you make a dragon.
wow.
Laughless Dragon Queen. Yeah, like it's mono red, so the deck is you can only have one color, so you lose a lot of the most powerful dragons. But you also have some crazy, yeah, it's non-token dragons, and then she has an activated ability that is you pay 2 mana and all your dragons get +1/+0 till the end of turn, which is the staple dragon ability called Fire Breathing,
That's
very
cool.
fittingly.
That sounds
Yeah,
really cool. Just
it's a
pull out
lot of fun.
dragons left and right. Like, oh
Yeah,
look,
that's
a horde
the
of dragons.
absolutely that's one of my favorite. Like it's probably the deck I want to build most next. Like I have a that's a lie. I have a lot I want to make. Um, some from like cards that I opened up recently. Well, yeah, in like the last couple months. Some that I just had sitting around that I want to build. But like, there's so much craziness and so much stuff I want to like just get down and build. That I don't have the money, which is the biggest issue. Everything here is really expensive.
Yeah, I
Um,
was gonna say that is a big barrier to entry. Um, I mean for most card games, but especially
oh, for sure.
Magic
Yeah,
is
yeah.
but there's nothing
Hmm.
against like printing the cards out,
Yeah, that's what I do.
right?
Yeah. Like I
I
literally,
mean,
like the telling there is, depends where you're playing. If you're playing with your friends at home, as long as they're fine with it, who cares? I literally have a deck that is entirely, like not entirely, but 90% printing out cards that I print out at a print shop.
yeah,
Um,
I can imagine a casual sense would be okay, but is Commander played um competitively at all?
there is a competitive scene, which is to say degenerate would be putting it lightly.
Oh, really?
It's a format where you win turn 3 or you cry.
Oh man,
It is brutal,
that doesn't sound
but
fun to watch.
like it can be. It can be fun to watch. It depends on what decks like because there's some decks that you can play in competitive that are really not fun. Um, but there's some that, from what I understand, can be really like genuinely interesting to watch. Like certain combo decks, because one of the other big things is because there's so many cards in the deck. There's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of counter spells usually in the competitive. There's a lot of ways to stop your enemies from doing stuff. So there's always a lot of back and forth because there's 4 people. It's never just okay. It's because compared to standard Magic, in 1v1s, it's like there is the one just like okay, well I hope I have something, and if I don't, I just lose. In Commander, it's okay. I don't have something. I need to hope they have something to stop them when we're all done or we're all cooked. And that's where it gets really exciting, especially for like even competitive. Like I've seen some videos with people playing really stupid, crazy decks. Like I technically even have a deck that is potentially competitive viable.
Wow.
Like if I swap out some cards and like really go nuts, I can just make it super degenerate and like I'm playing solitaire basically. But I'm not gonna do that. I no, I'm serious. Like it's so the deck is based around a creature called Joy Weatherlight Captain, which was one of the first creatures I bought, like legendary creature that I bought with the intent to make my commander.
What does it do?
So whenever a historic card enters the battlefield, historic being sagas, legendaries, or artifacts, you draw a card. It's just that's all the creature does. You just draw cards. But the way the deck works is you play a whole bunch of incredibly cheap stuff, like 0 mana, 1 mana artifacts, and you play stuff that makes other artifacts cheaper, and then you just draw your entire deck.
Is it?
Yeah, and then the way my deck's built is a little bit different. I have some more expensive stuff in there, so it's not just really like I'm just drawing everything. I'm just like all mana rocks, all just drawing and playing everything on one turn. I'm like no one else having fun, just watching me draw cards.
Yeah.
It's
I've
but my deck is.
seen
Hmm.
No,
Hmm?
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying like the way my deck is built, it's more so just draw in a turn. I'll draw a bunch of cards, get to my combo, which I have. I have one combo, which is super janky and it's super dumb, and I love it to bits. Where I basically turn all my artifacts into one artifact, which when you tap that artifact, it generates colorless mana equal to the amount of artifacts with the same name as it. And so you have like 20 artifacts all with the same name. So you can generate like a million mana, and then you use a spell called Giant's Emulating Inferno, which lets you target and your opponents up to three opponents or three targets any, and deal X damage, which with a bunch of colorless mana can kill them all in one turn.
So you just built
Super,
like an ICBM deck, is what you're telling me.
pretty much. It's super janky. Like I've only ever got on the combo off like once, and the only downside is if you get countered, you're done. You're like the only other way to win is just to deck yourself because
That
I
sounds
do.
that sounds incredibly fun.
It's it's a little fun. It's very janky and like can be slightly unfun to play against. Just because you're watching someone just play a whole bunch of stuff on their turn, you do nothing. But it's fun. Like I haven't gone to play it that much. I have a couple other decks I like playing. But it's fun. It's definitely an interesting deck to pull out every now and then.
Something I wanted to ask you about was give me a
Mhm.
second to collect my thoughts here. Um, you enjoyed the theory crafting a lot,
Oh
right?
God, yes.
And I think that's a good way for new players, maybe I would imagine for new players to get into Magic in the first place. Um, how much would you say the theory crafting is a part of playing the game Magic the Gathering?
I feel like it depends on person to person. But for Commander at least, in my opinion, it's about like 60-70% of the game. In my opinion. Because because you can always just like find the decks. There's a whole website which to their credit, there's a website called EDH Rec that helps you build decks, lets you figure things out, lets you see what people are playing with certain commanders, lets you like it's basically a guide to help you build decks, which I've used a lot. It's super great. But even then, like the going through and picking cards, saying like okay, maybe this is out of my budget, this is good, this is bad. Like and looking up cards on things like Strifefall, oh, it's so much fun, and that's what got me into the game, personally. Like
Hmm.
seeing as a new player, seeing all these crazy creatures with crazy effects that were like, how do I make this work? I don't know what half the cards in this game are, and exploring that, so much fun. Even in standard, like when you have a more limited card pool, like it's still incredibly fun figuring out like okay, I'm like with standard it's a little bit more solved, which is the thing. It's a little bit more clear to see what's broken and what's not. If you don't play what's broken, you're not gonna win. Um, but definitely like theory crafting and deck building and brewing is a big part of the game because you can just net deck, of course. You can just like okay, I want to play this. I'm just gonna go buy all the cards this list has and play it. But you're not attached to the deck when you do that.
I get that.
Like my Jory deck, I have played it as much as I'd like to, but I'm super attached to it. Like I'm super attached to like all my decks. Like
Do you think
except
it's more fun challenging another person's theory crafted deck or just making decks? Period.
I personally like like I would definitely like to just to to go over like play my deck and test it out with other people and like go over it over and over and over, figure out okay this works, this doesn't work, this is good, this is bad. Like I'm gonna cut this when I add this instead. I think that's a lot of fun. Like it's definitely a big part of the game, and you can't really like you can theory craft like you can like do that. Like I've theory crafted a whole bunch of decks. Um, like we used to have a tournament with some of the guys from here. Like we play online, so we could just theory craft and we just play those decks all the time. But the issue with that was like a lot of time, like you theory craft so many decks, and half the time, like someone will just play something degenerate, and like you won't get to try it out because you're playing online.
So there
Um,
has to be like a pact beforehand saying
yeah.
don't do this, don't do X, Y, and Z.
So fun fact, that's actually one of the biggest parts of Commander. It's called Rule Zero.
Really?
Before you get into any game, theoretically or with your play group, you generally want to, you're supposed to talk it out and be like, okay, I'm playing this deck. It's got these strengths, these weaknesses, yada yada yada. Which is it's easier to do when you're with your friends and like you're sitting down with if you invite your friends over, they bring their like 3 4 decks, and you're like, okay, I want to play this guys this with you guys. Like, yeah, I got this deck, and we're like, hey, I don't have anything that powerful. You guys got anything you can share me? And like, swapping like decks and stuff. It's a big part of it.
How long do games usually last in Commander?
Oh, it depends. In competitive
Just in
or in
general.
that's a it depends. It depends a lot.
Well,
Um,
excluding like the turn three wins, like how
no,
much is
even
your average play length?
again, it's still pretty varied because like if you're playing against super aggro decks, the game can take like 20 minutes, which it just sounds like a lot, but it's not.
Mm,
And if you're playing a lot of slower decks, it can be like an hour or two. I've
wow.
had games go that long.
Wow.
Yeah, but you don't always like notice when it goes that long because you're playing with your friends, you're hanging out, you're just talking, chilling, messing about, like fucking. Can I swear? Is that fine?
Oh yeah.
Am I allowed to swear? Okay. I just gotta check. Um, but like when you're playing with your friends, and people don't normally mind if it goes too long. Like unless you like it's you start playing at 10 and you have to wake up like go to bed at like 12. Then you're like, hey, let's close this up. I gotta go to bed. I gotta go.
Yeah. For sure.
But but other than that, like generally like you know beforehand seeing what people are playing how long it's gonna take.
I wanted to
But
ask you.
it's mhm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you
No,
go
no,
ahead.
yeah. It's just like it's just it depends a lot. Like there's no set time limit. There's no like slow play. There's no like you gotta finish this in an hour or
It's varied. It's super varied.
it's super varied. Yeah, basically.
Well, that's really good because it adds a lot to like replayability.
Oh, 100%.
Um.
Especially with 100 cards. Like with 100
Oh, I can
cards,
imagine. Standard deck
because
is what, like 60, right?
it's 60. Yeah, 60 with a sideboard of 15.
Wow. I wanted to ask you though, is that there's so many Magic cards made
Mm-hmm.
and produced. Like you could make a computer out of them, right?
Oh, someone has.
I I,
Someone's literally made a
I saw
Turing.
that. I I wanted to ask you because I saw that in passing, but can you explain it to me? Because I absolutely don't understand that.
Um. So someone made a Turing complete machine out of Magic the Gathering cards.
That is insane. How
I
does
don't
that
remember
even work?
exactly. I don't remember. It's some crazy copying token shenanigans that I don't understand. It hurts my brain. I don't. But it's a lot to do with there's a whole bunch of old cards and like that just do crazy stuff. A lot of cards that let you give your opponents creatures. A lot of there's cards that let you clone stuff. And there's also a lot of it just being like okay, like your opponent being okay with it. You don't even have to pull it off in real life, realistically.
Yeah. I just find it like incredible how, you know, Magic is so, I wouldn't say advanced per se, but it's so complex that you're able to create an actual computer out of the card effects.
Yeah, I honestly
Like,
hadn't expected it until I saw that video either.
name another game that can do that.
Probably like, I guess Minecraft, but
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
but yeah, but Minecraft's a different beast. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not a
Name
card
another
game.
card game that can do that.
No, probably not. Like
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Magic is super like unique, and it's the most original game ever. Like original in many senses. Like the gameplay, the way players interact with each other. Like when
You would
people like
say
say
it's one of the classics, one of
I mean, yes, it's
the nerd
25 years
classics.
old. I would assume it's one of
25
the
years old.
classics.
That's crazy.
It's almost 30 now, I think. I think it's only
Wow.
30. Like, it's probably what?
Another thing I wanted to ask you is,
Hmm.
why isn't there like a good popular Magic game online that is
I mean,
well
there's Arena.
polished?
Okay, well polished. That's a
Yeah.
asking for a little bit much there, homie.
I mean, even
Um,
like the lore of Magic and all the worlds they've created. Like, I've played a little bit when I was younger at summer camps, but I would play like the kid way where I would like steal cards because I didn't know what they do and I just thought they looked good.
Oh, that's
But
fine. Yeah.
like, as I got a little older, I started learning about all the worlds and all the stories and plot points they've created. Like, why isn't there a good, like, even an MMO for Magic?
I mean, the issue is like so actual Magic the Gathering like online there's you have like and Magic the Gathering Online itself, which is an older version of like it's a way to play Magic Online officially, but you have to put money into it's a whole thing. And there's Arena, which is newer from a couple years ago, but Arena is pretty limited in what it has.
Hmm.
And then when you actually want to make if you want to make an RPG out of it, the issue becomes how do you like so look at Legends that just came out which sorry it bombed this year rather it didn't come out it never even made it to full release.
What is
Um,
Legends?
so it's basically a Diablo style game that was supposed to release this year based on Magic the Gathering, but the design was
Oh, yeah, I
so
saw that. I saw that.
yeah the design was so terrible and it was so horrendously optimized and grindy and awful that no one played it and everyone complained and they just scrapped the project.
I feel like the
Um,
Magic universe is such a good source of untapped media and content. Like even a TV show. I saw on Netflix the other day they did a Monster Hunter TV show, which I never would have expected, but
fun fact about that: they are actually making Netflix is actually making a Magic the Gathering TV show.
oh, really? Well, I stand
Yeah,
corrected then.
it still works. We don't know anything about it yet. But there's been some media in the past. There's a manga for Magic the Gathering based around the Planeswalker Chandra, who is my fucking favorite. I literally bought her the special collector's thing for Chandra that comes with some cards based around her. Um, but there's a manga, there's some stuff. But the issue with having full media for it, people get really pissy about the lore for the game.
Really?
Like, because the lore is one of the big selling points, and people get incredibly attached to all the different parts. Like if you ask someone what their favorite set is, the sets are all named after the planes they're from.
Hmm.
Which for anyone listening who doesn't know, Magic the Gathering is set on different planes, each plane being like a different like universe essentially. Um, and people get really pissy because even the game itself could fuck it up tremendously. There's been times people have like we've revisited certain planes and it's not been good, or people love a plane so much they want to revisit it, but like there's people are scared, so that like the people get very defensive. Um, as with anything, no people don't want anyone them to mess it up. They don't want to risk it. Um, and more so that like it's hard to transfer the gameplay of Magic the Gathering to an MMO or to an RPG. I think the best way they've done it so far is just by releasing modules for D&D based around Magic. Like that's like the best way what they've done. Like they I think every set that comes out with a new plane, they do a small book um that has all about the plane, like all the information anyone would need, things like that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, there's a big one based on what is realistically the most iconic Magic the Gathering set, or one of them at least, called Ravnica, which is that was actually the first set I started playing in. One of the first sets, one of the first planes rather. Back when the how was it Ravnica, Guilds of Ravnica? That's what it was. Yeah. So to explain Ravnica, it's essentially imagine the planet is a giant city.
Like
That's it.
Coruscant?
No, yes, but no. It's kind of like Coruscant, but more of well, yeah, but like think of it like Coruscant in a sense, except it's smaller scale because planes aren't like full size planets. Um,
Huh, that's cool.
yeah, and the entire plane is divided into 10 guilds, each guild representing different color pairing, which are so iconic. The color pairings are named after them.
Really?
Yeah, it's insane.
That's cool.
Like the Yeah, and each guild is sort of in charge of something different. For example, the Izzet Guild, which is red blue, is in charge of all the science and they're sort of mad, crazy geniuses, with their guild leader being a giant ancient dragon, which became a god in the one of the latest later in the newest sets. But that's a whole different tangent story that I don't want to. It's a mess. The
So,
story's a bit of a mess.
so how do you learn about the lore? Do the because or from what I remember at least is the cards have like a snippet or two maybe,
Yeah.
like a quote. Is that the lore and it's just pieced together through a deck of 60 cards?
I mean, generally, the way that the decks aren't really telling the story generally, but there's usually cards that tell this like story. That they've been doing more now is they have cards that say, "Hey, this is the story spotlight card," and they sort of piece together from that. But
Mm,
they've also what they've traditionally done is they have short stories they post on their mothership website, which is sort of like their main website, um, with sort of the information on what's going on. So what they've been doing recently, for example, for Strixhaven and for Kaldheim, which are some of the newest sets that came out recently, they have short stories of detailing what happens in the lore. So, for example, in Kaldheim, you have Kaya, who's a planeswalker, arriving in Kaldheim, and while she's hunting a monster, and then it sort of details all her adventures and everything that's happening, and sort of the story that happens during the set. And it's a way to tell it not just through the cards, but also to explain it better because the cards can tell so much.
yeah,
You need actual story and written. It's very well written usually.
that's
Um,
cool. How long do they usually tend to be? Like, is it a novel
uh,
or like a short story?
no, they tried doing full novel stuff for a couple sets, but no one liked it because no one wanted to sit through a poorly written, like okay, not poorly written. Like to be fair, they got some pretty good writers and stuff
Mhm.
for the most part. They just had the issue of no one wanted to like read a whole novel that wasn't. The writers didn't fully get like the story of the the people in charge like of Magic were like trying to put across. They got a good part, but like it was just confusing. Um, but it's usually like short stories. Like think of it as like 5 different chapters usually, no longer than that.
So, for anybody who wants to get into lore, or maybe they like the learning aspect of Magic, like
Mm-hmm.
understanding the circumstances of it, like where would they go?
There's a few good places. Magic Arcanum has some good videos on lore.
Mm,
Um, I mean that's the best one I can think of. They do some really good stuff. Like really in depth deep dives into a lot of the sets. Um,
apologize.
it's all good. But other than that, like just go through and like there's some wikis that have some lore about each set. That just generally give you a rough outline of what happens each set. There's generally the trailers for each set have some stuff that tells you what's going on.
How's
Some
the fan
really
side of the lore?
like all the fanfic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I steer well clear of that stuff. I don't
Is
want to
it
touch that.
on a scale of 1 to 10? How raunchy is it?
I don't know. Like I said, I steer well clear of it.
All right.
I assume it's fairly raunchy. There's some pretty heavy ships, like
Yeah.
and like not just relationships as well. Um, some of them which are really cute and like kind of like cool pairings. Some of them are like okay. Um, but it's just generally cool. Like from like just the fan base in general is always very respectful and they know what they're doing.
That's always good.
And yeah, like it's always just like a part of it's just like knowing where you are, who you're talking to, and making sure you're with people that aren't gonna be like, hey, look, I got my so and so fanfic that I'm gonna force you to read and force my ship on you, even though it's totally not canon, and I'm telling you it's canon anyway. Because
Um,
there's always gonna be people like that.
yeah. Well, shifting topic slightly to
Mhm.
just people, like what for somebody who's just starting out, what would be a good place to go and find a group to play Magic with, either online or in person?
In person, definitely your local game store. Um, Wizards or Wizards of the Coast, who is going to make the game, has a finder for any stores near you. Um,
It's really good.
so you can look up in your nearby store if you have a physical deck, or you can go buy one there. They also generally have beginner decks or intro decks that you can learn with. Look out for any open house dates. What open houses where you go, they'll give you like one of the starter decks, and you can. And there's usually a bunch of people that go that are new, people that are learning, and you'll also use you'll all learn together. But it's
Very
generally
cool.
like I generally think the local game store. That's where I went for the first time. It's super nerve wracking if you're like sort of introverted, but it's definitely worth going. Like I've met some like just going. I've met some really cool people that are really chill. Like even one of my professors in university now I've played
No
with.
way.
I not even kidding. Like a couple actually.
Wow.
Um, one that I have I had last semester. I played Commander with a couple times at the old game store I used to go to. Um, and it was real. Like I didn't know he was my professor. I just knew him as a dude. He's also the guy I bought my dice, my D&D dice from. But
That's so
like
cool.
yeah, he's a super chill dude. Like he would like he was actually one of the first people I played with first day. But like generally, like, especially playing Commander, like you say, hey guys, I have a new Commander deck. Do you guys can you guys teach me, help me like figure out how to play? And they will. They'll be really patient with you. Usually, they'll teach you. Like one of the guys who I was when I was still learning, they'd be like, okay, just remember play calm, play relaxed, don't be nervous. Think about what you're doing. Play reactively, not you know play before. Don't just jump
Massively.
in ahead. Yeah. And it was like all really good advice, and it was like it genuinely felt super welcoming. Then I met some other dudes in the same place who told me, "Yeah, your deck sucks. Sell and book and build a competitive deck." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah,
But I like them.
there's always that like double-sided nature of any
Yeah,
community, you know. But it's good to hear that the Magic community is generally welcoming.
yeah, especially the Commander community because Commander is now I think it's actually the most popular format for the game.
But
Yeah. Also, funny enough, it's the most popular format, and it's also the format that the Wizards didn't make themselves. So it's a fan made format.
it's
Um,
it's funny.
Yeah, but generally with Commander players, they'll generally be pretty civil and they'll understand. And like they're gonna be like, "Oh, you're not playing the most optimal card. Or what are you doing? How dare you?" Some people will, but that's with everything.
Yeah,
Generally, they shouldn't. And it's just being cordial and being nice. Uh, and
it's
it's
really
just
great to
that.
hear.
Like, yeah, from my experience, they've been super welcoming. And as long as you get to yourself, um just you gotta find people. Like give some time. Check out one game store. If you can tell that everyone there is a bunch of sweaty nerds, that's not what you're looking for. Check another one out. Even if it's a little bit far, it's definitely worth it. Um, and if you are sweaty, just stay there and spend $1,000 to build the sweatiest deck you can find, and not have fun because you're playing stacks and you're a goddamn degeneraate. And I hate you for playing
Game
stacks.
for all people. Game for all kinds of people. All
Except for
right.
stacks players. Stacks players can go burn in hell.
All right, Nacho. Thanks for coming on and talking about Magic. It was really
Yeah,
fun.
no problem.
All right. You
It's a
have a
lot of
good day,
fun.
man.
All right, big at you.